So hi, Sam and Jacob. We want to welcome our audience here for an interview series with Historic Santa Fe Foundation on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the Faith and John Meem Hands-on Trades Internship Program. And we're hoping to do some interviews with a few of our past interns. And we're starting with the 2024 intern, Sam Crowley. So Sam, welcome today. We also have Jacob Cisneros, who is Historic Santa Fe Foundation's Preservation Programs and Projects Manager. And we just wanted to start out with a few questions for Sam, find out about the program last year and what is happening with her program at Tulane University and how she's going to apply maybe some of the skills that she learned this year. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
Do
Happy
you
to
want
be
to tell
here.
us, do you want to tell us a little bit about your program that you're currently enrolled in at Tulane University and what led you there?
Yeah. Um, so I'm currently enrolled in I'm a candidate for a Master's of Historic Preservation at Tulane University, due to graduate in May 2025. So I kind of got there by way of city planning. So I graduated my undergrad in economics, and I went into economic development and city planning. And I just, by happenstance, ended up being the historic preservation planner for the city of Cheyenne. And then I sort of fell in love with preservation and decided to go get my master's degree in New Orleans, which is a fantastic city for it. And then I saw this amazing opportunity for an internship in Santa Fe, building on some of the skills that I felt like I had not been exposed to before, like trades work and working directly with building materials. So I was really excited to find you guys.
How did you find out about the program?
So I religiously scour PreserveNet. And I think I saw it on there. I don't know if did you post it on PreserveNet?
Maybe.
I think you
That would
did.
be something that Julia would do, but probably so.
I
Yeah.
think Julia probably did then because she probably also has religiously scoured that in her
Mhm.
past as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, I saw it on there and I was like, this is amazing. So that was it.
Fantastic. Uh, so Sam, how was the John Meem preservation internship? How was that complemented your work that you're currently involved with now at Tulane? And how do you think it might complement it as you continue your program, finishing up your master's?
So because I had a background on preservation is like a really, we all know, like it's a very broad field. And so I'm in a program with many people with architectural backgrounds and very few trades backgrounds, but I have a background in sort of the like Main Street development, that side of things. And so I felt like I had kind of a lack of knowledge or a gap in knowledge around building materials. And I was really struggling in some of my classes to conceptualize how buildings are built, because that was just something that is sort of assume that for the most part when you go into a grad program like this. So I was having to do a lot of catch up work, and I felt like I wanted to work with materials and really like, I think there's like a different experience when you're doing hands-on work, and that it's just a different learning experience than learning it in a textbook. So that has really complemented the work I'm doing now. Let me think about that. I think I just came back to school this year with a much more detailed and in-depth understanding of how buildings work, because when you're working with Adobe, especially like we worked with it on multiple scales, right? So we did like the smaller Adobes for family days, which gave me a great idea of like that scale of materiality and like um, how Adobe buildings are built. And that gave me an idea of how a lot of other buildings are built. And so like throughout that process, I was asking Jacob questions like, well, what does a bond mean? What is this? Like, how does the structure work? And Jacob would explain all of it to me. And that was, that's something that now I've gone, like, for example, I went to a site visit earlier this week, I think, to a Boussiage building, which is essentially Louisiana's version of earth and architecture. And I really knew a lot more about how that structure was put together. So I would say I just have a greater understanding of building materials and how they work. And I'm hoping in my future career, I'm able to use that on the job, especially like right now I'm in an architectural conservation class and I find it really interesting. So we like walk around New Orleans and point out materials. We're like, oh, that's limestone, that's terracotta, that's this, that's that. And I feel like I have a much better grasp on how to identify materials based off of their qualities from this internship. And I'm like, oh, I know what lime wash is, you know, all of these kind of things that are now like, it's sort of like, I don't want to say like you have like brain and body knowledge, but it's like I know it in my body now because I've like done that work with my body. So that has been really useful. And I hope, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of grad school, but I hope that I have a job where I can use that knowledge, whether it's like evaluating buildings or documenting them, whatever it is. I think that that's going to carry with me throughout my career.
Well, yeah, you've mentioned New Orleans a couple of times too, and I had a question about that because you actually did get to go to a historic board meeting here in Santa Fe. And you also participated in a lot of our staff meetings. You went to board meetings in addition to the hands-on experience that you had. And then you have your other experience in Wyoming, and then from, you know, being from Colorado and all too, you've pulled a lot of these things in. What do you see as some of the differences? I was mostly going to ask about New Orleans and Santa Fe, the differences and similarities between the two, but what have you kind of discovered in the preservation world about working in these different cities and different environments?
Yeah, so I think like culturally, there are a lot of differences in the places that I've worked. I would say, in terms of the architecture and in terms of like Santa Fe is obviously so unique in and of itself, and so is New Orleans, and they have a lot of differences. But I would say they're the same in the respect that the culture around preservation can be similar in some respects because those two places are both such unique little microcosms within the US. So like the preservation culture has sort of grown around that in both places. So I actually see a lot of similarities between New Orleans and Santa Fe. And I think it just like, I think preservation is so cool because it really highlights what a community values in so many different ways. And in Santa Fe, like I'm doing my practicum on my experience with Historic Santa Fe Foundation. So I've really been thinking about like the story I want to tell with that. And in Santa Fe, it's really so fascinating to me that like Adobe is still, it's still such a living, breathing part of everyday life in Santa Fe. Like people, for example, like when I was at El Rancho de las Golondrinas, I was out, I kind of talked about this in my presentation. I was like out in the front of the area where people were coming in and everybody had something to say to me about Adobe. All of the like people that were from Santa Fe or had some connection to Santa Fe had some real connection to Adobe. They weren't like, oh, I've seen this in a museum or I like whatever, I've read about it. They were like, I've worked with it, or my grandma has worked with it, or I have a friend whose house is built of it. So actually I would say that's kind of the main difference in preservation somewhere like Santa Fe to me is that it's still like an ongoing process of new Adobe structures and things being built like in the last, 50 to 100 years. And so that has been really interesting to see. But I would say like the as far as like city meetings and those sorts of things go, I love city meetings so much. I think they are so fun, and it is like being in an episode of Parks and Rec, just watching like the different personalities come to the table and have these super interesting discussions. And I love that preservation meetings always get philosophical. Like, I think it's so interesting. So I loved going to that meeting in Santa Fe because it confirmed a lot of the things that I had learned in Cheyenne working as a city planner. I was seeing like a lot of the same conversations play out. Like, you know, you had your preservation purist on the board that was like, well, we're gonna stick to the rules. And then another person was like, well, we're just trying to preserve like the context of the neighborhood, but that leaves room for A, B, and C. And then the applicant was like, and so it's really interesting to watch those conversations and how I think in Cheyenne there were different values at play. So I think people were a little bit more concerned with like property rights there, I noticed. So preservation sort of held a different place in that community than it did in Santa Fe, where it's just sort of like when you move to somewhere like Santa Fe or New Orleans, you know that preservation is a key value. So if you move there, you probably value it as well. So just some like community differences. It's really interesting to watch.
Fantastic. Great answer. Sam, so of all the projects that you worked on, what do you think left the greatest impression on you?
That's a really good question. I worked on so many projects. So just to give like our audience an idea, I'll pull up my little intern report here. The structure of the internship was working on something sort of smaller or at El Zaguan, which is where Historic Santa Fe Foundation is located, with Jacob, and then kind of taking that either to a bigger project at El Zaguan or out into the world. So I went to El Rancho de las Golondrinas, and I also went to the Randall Davy studio at the Audubon Institute. And just sort of like using those in more of a real life context. So I don't know. We did so many things. So we started with like basic carpentry. So we did like what's the word I'm looking for? Rescreening the doors and some of the storm screens at El Zaguan. And then we went to mixing mud and making mini adobes. We tested mud plaster. And then I went to Rancho de las Golondrinas. I built with adobe bricks. Then I did water mitigation and tar sealing of a rolled tar roof at Randall Davy. And then we lime washed the front corridor. And I also mud plastered the wall on apartment number 7. I want to say, I don't know, I kind of want to say that mud plastering the wall was probably my favorite one. Let's say that. And I think your question was, what was the most impactful, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd say as far as my like understanding goes, I think mixing Adobe and then building with it gave me such a solid understanding, and also was such an amazing experience to be like, I built this wall. That's crazy. I've never built anything in my life and I just built this wall. It was really empowering as a person and as a preservation professional to know that I can do that. So I think that was probably also just the process of like mixing. So I noticed like some similarities when I was mixing cement to when I mixed the adobe. I was like, oh, this just demystified what cement is for me. Because, you know, I had heard it in my classes, but I didn't really like understand. So that was huge, and sort of like the linchpin of like where the knowledge started from for me. And then as far as like a favorite project, I really enjoyed the craftsmanship and like the artistry of plastering. I thought, and it was just very zen, and I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, so Sam, if you
That's great. Thank you.
were if you were to do it again, or if you just in general recommendations for us, what else would you like to see in the program? What do you, I mean, did you have different perceptions as you came in, and then now that you're going out, are there other things you wish you would have learned? Did you wish you had more time? You know, what are some, or a little less time? You know, what are some things that you would recommend for Historic Santa Fe Foundation, and or maybe even recommend for interns as they're coming into this program to increase their learning, or to bring about more to awareness beforehand so they can get the most out of it?
Okay, so there's two parts of that. So the first, like to recommend to Historic Santa Fe Foundation, like anything that I would want to see different. I had such a great experience. I wouldn't change it. Like I just loved my experience. But I guess like the one thing was what you said, more time. And we always wish there's like every single day, I'm like, I wish there were more hours in the day. And that's how I felt leaving this internship. I was like, I wish there was more hours that I could have done so many more cool things. I would say probably like logistically, one of the difficult things about the internship was that Jacob has such a unique job in that he is he is like pulled in so many directions, which I think he loves because that man does not sit still. So, but there's just like the nature of his job as like as a steward and a maintenance person of this building, and then also as the program person, that he works on the programs with Julia and then works with the interns as well. I think that it was really, see, I don't even know if I would want to change this because it was interesting to see and really good for me to see, because I would love to have Jacob's job one day in the future, in 20 years from now. So it was really cool to see like what that looks like, and sort of the everyday of him being like, there's a fire over here, we have to put this out, or we have to help with this, and then we have to get back. But I think as the intern, it would have been like in the future, it would maybe be more helpful to be able to like sit with a task for longer. Like maybe even just for part of the summer, doing it that way. And I don't know exactly what that would look like, but having that like being like pulled in and out of tasks, I think it could be disruptive to learning sometimes. So like having that sort of like dedicated time to like do this task for like a week, and that's what you're doing, you know? That would be that I think that would honestly be the only thing I would really change, because I really enjoyed the structure of the internship, that we had so many smaller projects. I think like another way it could be structured is having one or two really big projects. And I don't know what that looks like, whether it looks like, you know, just something like at the Randall Davy, maybe like doing one room at the Randall Davy for, you know, a month or something. Like that could be cool in the future, but again, it's just different. I enjoyed, because I had very little trades knowledge, I really enjoyed having the small projects, because it was like it gave me just a little bite to chew on at a time. So that was perfect for me. But I think if I had had more trades experience, I may have enjoyed having like a big project to work on and really like get deep into the weeds with. So that might be like the only two things I would say. And then as far as like what other interns could, you know, sort of prepare themselves for in the future, I think it's helpful. So I know you guys try to get people from New Mexico, right? Or like, do you? kind of aim for people that are going to UNM?
Well, ideally, it would be great if we continued to foster a preservation community here in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And the goal is also to, because there is such a need in the preservation world for especially younger people to come into the field, because I think people are kind of aging out. And so a lot of younger people need to be trained in some of these fields, you know, under the larger umbrella of preservation. So I think the goal would be, and I could be totally wrong about this looking back through, but my thought would be also to continue to foster that within the state. But in a larger community, we are most definitely open to embracing that with training people, because who knows, Sam may come back to New Mexico one day.
Hey, I hope so. I
Yeah.
love Mexico. Um, yeah, so I would say for me personally, it would have been helpful. And again, this is why I asked, because I think most people in New Mexico are very familiar with Adobe. But it would have been helpful for me probably to do more reading or kind of like preliminary learning about Adobe.
Mhm.
I don't think it's like a requirement because I learned on the job, and you guys also have a fantastic library that I was able to access. So I wish, honestly, I wish I would have accessed the library more during my time there. That would have been great. And that's something that I think future interns could know, like anything that they're interested in, especially now that Julia has such a great archive and library at the Brooks House. I would say take advantage of that while you're there, especially for any like anything that you're just interested in on your downtime, especially if they're like staying on site or any of that sort of stuff. It's in those down moments, I wish that I had like taken more of it in and also taken more of Santa Fe in. And you know, we always say that. Like I had a lot of side projects I was working on, but I really, when you're somewhere, it's good to explore. So that's what I would say for future interns, because it is like an immersive internship. You are immersed in this area and the culture. And so taking it in is part of the learning process, I think. And that would be my only thing that I would probably change if I could go back.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Jacob, did you have a last question as we kind of wrap up things here with Sam? Oh, turn
Oh,
your
I can
sound
hear you.
on, Jacob.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. I just want to say it was a joy to have you there. You were, just willing to take on any project that you were given. And you know, what really stuck with me was your awareness of, the lack of hands-on preservation trades programs in the country. And it would just be great. I'm sure you're going to be an advocate for this need, for this awareness, with your cohort at school. And I hope you just, that awareness continues and you continue to promote that idea and promote that notion that there is this lack of these programs and this kind of programming. And I hope that when you leave your program at Tulane, that you will be an advocate for that and help to promote that.
I
And I think you will.
Yeah, I definitely will. And my experience with you guys, I already felt that way before going into the internship, and my experience with Historic Santa Fe Foundation and with you, Jacob, has been like so crucial in kind of cementing that aspect in my brain and giving like growing that value for me. And really like I saw firsthand how important it is to know how to do these things properly in so many cases. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and just being an awesome teacher.
Thank you.
Well, thanks Jacob for helping today, and thanks Sam for your interview. We miss you here at the foundation. And we hope to keep up a relationship. We'd love to do a wrap-up video, another interview like in a few years and find out where you are. So thanks so much for the extensive intern reporting as well. We'll share that with our community. And then once we post this video, we'll send it out to you and share it with a broad audience, hoping to get some future candidates who are amazing like you are. So thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you both so much. I miss y'all too, and I just had the best experience. I couldn't say enough about it. So I'm glad that we did this interview so other people get to know a little bit about the internship.
And we'll post the internship. We usually do applications with a deadline, usually around the beginning of the year with a deadline around March. So we'll post those up there if anyone's watching this and they're curious about it now. And it's on historicsantafe.org, our website. So thank you both.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, Sam.